Hi, I'm Chris Reed, founder and CEO of sustainable battery materials producer Neometals.
Hello.
How are you, Matt?
Not too bad, not too bad. Thought we'd catch up because you're doing the rounds in Europe and you've popped over to see some investors here in London as well.
Yeah.
How's it all going? Happy bunnies?
Yeah. Oh, look, I don't know if I would have said happy bunnies. I mean, look, their general high-level macro is not the greatest.
It's not.
But, you know, look, we're over for Primobius business, board meetings. We're coming this far. You've got to come into London and tell everyone, give them the latest updates that we gave the shareholders at the AGM.
Well, it all seems to be like happening quite quickly at the moment. So you obviously seen the press release on Primobius.
Yeah. I
know you expected it, but it's kind of good news to the market. How have your sort of institutional shareholders received that message?
Yeah, I mean, look, everything's starting to come to a head at Primobius.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, we're starting to implant more staff in there. We've got our head of recycling and head process engineers for that, relocating to Germany, starting to build Primobius up as a separate operating company, putting all the systems in place. So yeah, it's really starting to get a good head of steam.
It's a good head of steam, and also your name bouncing around Germany a lot at the moment. You've got a few things going on. Obviously, we saw the big Mercedes headline earlier in the year, and with the Licular. How are we pronouncing
that? Licular is the recycling special purpose vehicle.
Absolutely. And now with Primobius off and running, making a bit of a name for yourself here. So the Aussies are in London on AIM. What's the plan in Germany then?
So in Germany, the stock trades on the German exchanges.
Right, okay.
You know, so you don't have an official listing, but it's listed there.
Right.
You know, our probably second largest group of shareholders are German. Right, the Deutsche Börse runs its own sort of shadow share register called Clearstream. So, I mean, we can track them. I mean, they're good shareholders, right?
Yeah.
So whenever you've got an announcement about, you know, something in Primobius or something in Germany, you get a good pickup. They actually turn over more stock than they do in London. So
that's great.
Love them to death.
I want to talk about what next for Primobius, right? Because obviously now you're clear who your partner is, and the fact you're going to be doing it together. You've committed to that. They've committed to that equitably in terms of the capital contribution component. So, does that put a strain on the rest of the business now? And how do you kind of manage your contribution?
So look, you know, essentially we're still scaling up Hilkenbach. We're putting on a third shift now. We're running a dedicated trial for Mercedes this week and next.
Okay.
And then we're going to be offering them the spoke plan agreement in the March quarter,
right? The
hub plan agreement in the June quarter, and then we've obviously got to start constructing that in the second half of the year. So that's the 10-ton spoke up to a 10-ton integrated, and then we start that R&D collaboration with them. The next step is obviously the 50-ton spoke, so we're busy on the engineering for that. And then the guys at Stelco are running all their commercial approvals, all of that sort of stuff in parallel. We expect to offer them a plant supply agreement in the June quarter. Once we do that, that triggers that 30-day window where we've got to buy into the joint venture.
Right. So let's talk about the money side of things. So what does it commit you to? I know you've got a bunch of cash sitting there at the moment, so you're kind of good in a very, very meaningful way. Yeah. But you'll want to finance this thing. You'll want to maybe get fresh money in, and obviously things moving forward, it will allow you to do that, right? People are going to feel confident they can sort of see the cash flows or near-term cash flows, right? So what are you doing about it? Where's the money going to go?
Yeah, look, so Primobius is making small cash flows out of Hilkenbach now. So Primobius, if it were to have 50% equity in the Stelco recycling joint venture, you'd be up for about half of 100 million US.
Right.
50 million US, we would have to put in 25 million US over that 12-month construction, right? So, I mean, like you say, we've got plenty of money on the balance sheet. We can ring fence money, but we do want to make sure that we maintain a strong balance sheet so that we can get into joint ventures 2, 3, 4.
Yeah, but the money you've got at the moment is kind of enabling money, right? You can start projects and initiatives and, you know, sign up partners, because that whole partnership model is quite interesting to me. It's something you're replicating a lot here. But just remind people, certainly your shareholders, go, well, hang on, they're not going to burn through my the kind of that enabling cash. They're going to have to go and get money.
Sure.
Is it going to come from here in Europe or the Aussies?
So look, for the battery recycling, we expect that the first plant will have to be equity funded.
Right. Okay.
So the decisions around the
entirely
funding,
equity funded.
Well, the first spoke for sure.
Okay.
I mean, it'll generate sales out of the black mass while you then go in to build the hub. You could look at debt funding for that later on. But certainly equity funding.
Why later on? Because if you're looking at, if you're able to say, well, there's some revenue flows there, and as we build these things up, the revenue flows will get bigger. And I think we were talking before camera started rolling about the fact that Europe is initiating all of these mandates on battery manufacturers, car manufacturers. They're going to hit some big targets, and the numbers today compared to what they're going to need to be massive. So there's a big tidal wave of demand coming. Yeah. Why can't you use that to get debt now? Why do dilatory equity?
So you've got technology risk. So you don't find, until you have your larger plants up and running, so the banks are just not prepared to take risk on new technology for the first plant until it's operating at steady state and they've got line of sight on the cash flows.
Right.
But conceptually, we're taking a 10-ton money-making business and making it 50 tons, then putting on the integrated refinery to get the next step up in earnings and then to replicate that.
Right.
So, our funding requirements are going to be mid-next year.
Okay, and so you're siloing all of these projects. They're under, obviously, Neometals, but they're siloed, so cash is protected.
Yeah, I mean, look, we invest like you would invest, and you rank them on the return on invested capital. So within the portfolio, the battery recycling has the highest return on investment capital.
Yeah.
And then you've got the vanadium recovery project, because they're at similar sort of stages.
Yeah.
The Eli process is sort of a 25, 26 FID, so it's a couple of years behind.
Okay.
Barrambie, depending on how you wanted to develop it, you could be in production in a year or two. That project's at a similar stage that we did with Widgie Nickel. So we had all the nickel assets, fantastic base, granted mining leases, and so it needed 2 years and about $20 million to take it to being ready to press the button.
Right.
So what we did is we demerged it, did an entitlement issue, and gave it a new life. And so that's gone really, really well for the Neometals shareholders. Their 20-cent stock has hit 60 something this year and sitting at about 36 or 37 cents yesterday. So that's done well. Barrambie, titanium's not really a battery material. It's a fantastic asset. The Euros guys put out a really good research note on what Barrambie could be worth. Yep. And the shareholders own all of them. So, me personally, I can't see why we couldn't do a Widgie Mark II with Barrambie. Now, Eli, like I said, sort of 2 years away from having to put any real big money in it.
Okay.
The vanadium recovery project, obviously we're earning 50% of that. That'll soon be crystallised. The investment decision there is 30 June. We've appointed debt advisors and investment bank up in Scandinavia. They're working through with the EIB and the NIB, through the project funding process. That would then drop out how much equity we've got to raise for that. That's a Scandinavian special purpose vehicle. Yeah. And, for projects where you're producing a battery material from waste whilst you're capturing and sequestering carbon in the tailings, it ticks a lot of boxes. So, Europe has a lot of green funds. Yeah. Debt and equity, same as London, hence why we're here.
Essentially. Okay, well, there's a nice little roundup of all the other projects, but today, Primobius, please. There's a few things that I would like you to kind of share with us in terms of where you get comfort from. Okay. Yeah. One, technology. You referenced it earlier. Technology. You're a hydrometallurgical process, but the bulk of companies
installed capacity
are pyrometallurgical companies, right? So there's going to need to be a change there, and I guess you put yourself in a good position technology-wise. Two, I referenced the scale of what's coming down the line, the demand side of things, and a three, it's not that far away. It's a couple of years away, which I guess does you a favour in terms of hopefully the economy does do something, right? Between now and then, and also in terms of FID, it kind of helps you, right? So just on those three things, where are you at?
Yeah, so certainly. So in terms of the technology, I mean, obviously we're an early mover into this space. So, you know, we do regular freedom to operate of our technologies. They're going through the national phase patents. So, you know, you essentially start very, very broad claims and narrow them down. So we find ourselves in a pretty good position with respect to our IP.
Yeah.
Competitors, we need competitors, you know, so sort of overlapping into the second part.
Why do you need them? Why do you say that? We need them.
Well, you need to service the market. It's when you don't service the market or enough, people then start looking at other things.
Right.
And we want to make sure that they're always looking at lithium batteries.
Right.
Because there are solutions to recycle them and close the loop.
Okay.
Yeah, but we've got to meet the market, what the market wants. So, you know, the current installed capacity in Europe for recycling, pyromet and hydromet, 100 to 110,000 tonnes.
Okay.
Right? Of which 3,000 tonnes is hydromet recycling.
Oh, wow.
So it's not a lot. The total addressable market in 2026, we estimated about 350,000 tonnes. Who's going to build the capacity? So then, you know, I noted in the Barclays report this week, you know, Umicore, they got in there by 2026, they'll have a 150,000 tonne plant. Hydrovolt, which is Northvolt and Norsk Hydro, 125,000 by 2030. You know, and I have a look at them and I'm like, okay, well, that's great. In our business models where we operate as principal, they're genuine competitors. But these guys are going into recycling because they use the end products for their downstream business.
Slightly different strategy and need.
So, you know, Umicore are in recycling because of their cathode business. They're the world's best biggest cathode producer outside of China. Big plants here. For every tonne they don't get from recycling, they've got to go into the market and fight for it. Northvolt, they're a cell maker.
Yeah.
Right? But to feed the cell making ambitions, you've got to have the products.
Yeah.
Right? So these guys aren't doing it because they want to become recycled. They have to become recyclers. And so that's our principle. They would be competitors, and even joint ventures, they would potentially compete.
Interesting.
But you can't pick up the phone if you're a car maker and you're going to have 1 million tonnes of cells that need to be shredded at some stage and processed, and say, you know what I need you to do? I need you to build me plants and license me the technology. And because they're not in that business, right? Where that's one of the unique selling propositions for us is that we've actually got a partner who's a plant builder and wants to build more plants and wants to build bigger plants. You can come to us in the nascent stage now. We get paid at Hilkenberg. Hilkenberg's full for next year, cornerstone by a German car maker. That's not Mercedes. We'll still be doing some Mercedes batteries. But, you know, we have batteries from all the German car makers at Hilkenberg. Right? So, but you can't bring the, you know, like we're saying to them, actually, what we can do is we can provide a disposal service when the volumes are small. When you want to become cell makers, we can build the 50 tonne a day plants in a joint venture. And then for the really, really big plants, we can go into plant supply and licensing. So we've designed the business to make less money per unit of throughput, for the volumes to go up, and most importantly for us, our return on invested capital. So every plant that we build as principal, we're going to pay 100% of the capex. For every one that we do as joint venture, we put in half as much. Then when we do plant supply and licensing, and these 500 tonne plants could be $1 billion. Now that's too much off the balance sheet. So if we're doing plant supply and licensing, we're not putting in capex. We're actually making money on the plant and we're getting royalties. So we've got a number of royalties that are out there, 10% gross sales royalty. They'll be very attractive. There's 8 income streams. The top 5 of the basket of goods are nickel, lithium, cobalt, copper, aluminium. You can hedge those on the LME. So if you've got a 500 tonne plant for a car maker, right, and you're getting that royalty, what's that worth?
No, that's fascinating. And I appreciated that aspect of it.
So we're exploiting our exclusive access to those plants.
Well, it's kind of like a land grab in a way, but in terms of it won't cost you as much for that land grab. You do need the competition, I get it, and there'll be lots of drivers from Umicore. I've got a different driver from you and different needs from you, and I think to one of the points you made, we're seeing sort of OEMs kind of moving into securing supply by going direct to miners, and I can sort of see obviously recycling is a big component, regulated.
Well, you can see Glencore going into Lysical.
Oh, right. Okay. So I think that the whole ecosystem is going to change. Ownership's going to change, and relationships will be formed to meet those needs. So I think that's fascinating. But I want to come back to something you said earlier with regards to the technology. Obviously, Pyromet, huge part of the market at the moment. Your Hydromet. So you do have a sort of competitive advantage in the sense that it's going to move that way,
recoveries, right? Lower carbon footprint, that sort of stuff.
Right.
That's coming into legislation. But moreover, it's more in spirit with the tailwinds of ESG.
Sure. Do you know what? ESG tailwinds, I'm not sure the tailwinds are as strong as they were. I think what they represent and the words themselves, but in terms of that kind of overlay of, it felt like a little bit synthetic over the past year. So it's important. And
there's a cost to do it.
There's a cost to do it. No, that's not the argument. I think the argument was funds rebadging themselves ESG to kind of look green. They're greenwashing themselves. But the people actually delivering the true meaning of it, absolutely essential. People need to be held accountable and to higher standards, all that kind of good stuff. So the ESG tailwinds do help. And I know you got your green accreditation, didn't you?
Yeah.
Was it last week?
We did last week, and then last month.
So and does it mean something? What does it mean?
So what does it mean? And well, it's easier to get in the doors of the green funds,
right?
Because you've got a third-party endorsement of your business model. I think we got our maiden MSCI ESG rating based off our 2021 sustainability report. We got a maiden BBB. Now most companies don't get actually rated,
right?
And so off our 22 sustainability report, I know Jeremy's working closely and seeing if we can't get that upgraded.
That'd be nice. So, do these funds get accredited?
I can't speak authoritatively about that.
Sorry.
I don't know.
I think that hasn't helped, and certainly the SEC is picking up on that, which is great. But back to you. So in terms of that kind of taking advantage of that competitive advantage, I can sort of see that why that model for you in terms of the royalty component, or just taking parts of businesses and doing that kind of land grab.
More is better.
Absolutely.
Right? So for every 50 tons, and then
what's coming is I want to work out. What's coming?
So I mean, look, in terms of targeting the customers, car makers, because they're most likely to be 500 ton per day plant customers. Cell makers, because they're most likely to be 50 ton a day. Waste aggregators that we're dealing with now are the smaller volumes, right? So our scale up from 10 to 50 to 500 over the next 5, 6, 7 years. And for every spoke, you're going to need a hub. For every car maker that takes a 50-ton spoke and a 50-ton hub in time for end of life is going to need a 500. So that's how we're prioritising, essentially the order book.
Okay. US, massive market, massive opportunity. Europe's, as big, and you're already there. How do you focus your time and attention? Because again, I think there's pros and cons for each market. So
so the Stelco SPV, they're responsible, their sites, procuring the feed. We come in and form a joint venture company to commercialise it. Right. We don't have a similar deal like that in Europe. Right. So for Europe, we've got our own 10-ton plant. We're looking at a 50-ton plant. We would only build it when we've got either a partner to a fantastic long-term contract to underpin it. So, as you would expect, phenomenal interest from everyone. Cell makers, car makers, waste aggregators. And then you've got people that supply battery materials into Europe, right? So like mining companies saying, these new battery regs, I have to have minimum recycled content.
Amazing.
And all of my customers are pushing me to lower carbon. Like I need to recycle.
It's bizarre.
And I'm like, wow, mining companies want to become recycled, so they've got recycled content so they can sell to the battery makers or their supply chains, And I'm just like, wow. Well, it's a really, really dynamic.
I think it's amazing. Look, we operate in a very small market, quite frankly, but the fact that miners are going to have to be urban miners too is... Wow, what a change! Yeah, and I hope it's just not a PR thing. I hope it's like
no. These are in the battery regs.
Yeah,
but you can ask any commodity trader. All of their customers that are wanting, battery materials are saying, "I need to know the carbon footprint. I've got to put stickers on the cells and the cars for the carbon footprint.
Yeah.
If you don't know your carbon footprint, I can't buy it for you. Yeah. Actually, from 2030, I need recycled content. 10% in 2030.
Yeah,
that will." To achieve that in Europe, you will need to recycle every battery in Europe. In 2035, they're doubling it. Talk about creating a rod for your own back. And then we talked about the capacity. The size of the opportunity is really unparalleled. So, we have a look at, and you can have a look at the AGM presentation, and in the slide that's around the Hilkenbach spoke, I've got, why we're there and why we're trying to get a market penetration.
Yeah.
In Europe, by the end of 2030, there will be 600 billion euros worth of recoverable material in cells. Okay. Right? Okay. That's the equivalent of more than 300 million ounces of gold. Yeah. And each ton of those batteries is equivalent to 4 to 5 ounces to the ton.
That's
crazy. You just need... That's what's out there.
Yeah.
Right? It already exists above ground, and we've just got to build processing plants for them. Nice. Otherwise, they sit there without the processing plant. So it's just... And growing, so the value of material sitting in the batteries in 2030 per annum is growing at 100 billion.
So when do governments get involved with this? Because governments are making promises to the public about what will be in terms of whether it be net zero or, the whole EV economy. Do they step in? I mean, I know there's grants and tax incentives, etc.
And the IRA in the US and stuff like
cash,
that.
Because you need to build actual plants now. You need to start now, it seems. And it seems to be moving too slowly.
That was why we partnered with SMS.
Yeah.
It was like, let's look at the trends. Number of electric vehicles, they need batteries. 10% or between 10 and 20% is scrap. Early feed for the 50-ton plants. And then on a lag basis, you've got the end of life. And we're like, okay, well, we can see where the resources are and we can see where the mines are, and arguably the better mines already in production, and then they're developing the next tiers and blah, blah, blah. And then we looked down the other end and thought, there's no one down there.
I know.
Right? We're spending so much money to put all of these exotic materials in these batteries.
Yeah.
Let's just work at unpacking. So the recycling gives you battery purity products for the next life, lowest carbon footprint, lowest point in the cost positions. It's just a matter of scale. Like, I don't want to be doing one project and then get another engineering company and start to build one. So we've got a cookie cutter approach, like the SMS guys, 10-ton plants, perhaps I can build 5 of them a year.
Right.
50-ton plants, perhaps I can build 3 of them a year. 500-ton plants, maybe we're doing 1 a year, right? Because they're big capex spends, So it's fantastic, and having a partner that's got 14,500 employees and production facilities in Germany, the US, India, China.
You just need to go and sign up contracts with more people, don't you?
Well, I mean, how many car makers and cell makers do you need? Well, if you've got two volume car makers and 1 volume cell maker and some waste aggregators, you're going to have to build hubs, spokes, and then bigger hubs and spokes. Then you start working out, how much can I build? I mean, even if we're wildly successful, like a penetration rate, because the market will be so big. It's not a winner takes all.
Right. So let's get back to the bit that your shareholders be interested in, which is right. So that's cracking on nicely. Well done, Primobius. Well done, all the other ventures, and you've given us the timeframes, and we understand the strategy and the cookie cutter approach type thing. So, how does that benefit the mothership, right? And what's your expectation around the time at which value will be accretive growth suggests slow growth, but will there be little jumps, little step ups?
So I think once you give the tools into the market, so we've got enough tools in the market to value the 50-ton spoke. You will have the 50-ton hub in the June quarter, and then it's really okay. For each time we announce a deal or a series of plants, you'll be able to add the
put a number on it.
You'll be able to put a number on it.
Okay.
So you could go by what do you think the penetration rate might be on the total addressable market? That's one way typically for technologies. DCF, NPV, based on the plants that you announce, peer metrics.
But that's a tough one as well, right? I remember this conversation with you about 2 years ago and go, right, people just don't know how to value. They're not sure who your peers are, not sure how to even value those peers, and most of them are private companies. Yep. And I think you as a company, you as a CEO need to be able to help people go, right, these are the things that are important to look at, and here's how one could look at valuing each of those components. Maybe the sum of the parts is a bit easier to work out, because right now it's a difficult market as well, so it also makes things a little bit. And
look, some of the analysts
gray,
we've got a couple of analysts that cover us. So we've got
how are they doing?
Tyler at RBC, we've got Trent at Euros, and Jean-Marc at Sencos, right?
Yeah.
So. If you have a look at 50-ton spoke, 50-ton hub, 500-ton spoke, 500-ton hub, the 10-ton ones are, not really massively moving the needle.
Let's call it a
pilot. Right? So you can value those on a 100% equity basis, make some assumption, then you can work out what a joint venture's worth and what Neometals equity's in that, right? And then what you've got to do is you've got to flip that over to, if they're doing plant supply and licensing, what does a 10% GSR generate? So when you have a look at it, we were hard rock miners. Despite having fantastic assets and earnings, have a look at what the big mining companies trade on as a PE.
Yeah, but
they're not double digit, right?
No.
If you're integrated and you're producing battery chemicals, you're well into the double digits,
right?
10 or 20 times, right? And then if you have a look at royalty companies, good royalty companies, 40 to 50, in a boom, 100. So, I mean, for us, it's about getting a PE. So putting those earnings on our balance sheet, having that transparency. So Primobius, we don't consolidate it.
Yeah.
But the performance, the statement of performance, so the P&L and the balance sheet will appear in the Neometals accounts as notes, just like we did with Mount Marion.
Okay. That's interesting, but I think the slight unknowns in that, and that's where we need your help, is like when people are talking about a mining company, it's like, well, we don't know what the geology is going to give up because we can't see it. So there's a kind of blue sky expectation, hopium component to that, whereas you can talk about what's happening at the surface in terms of the addressable market, your expectation of what percent of that you can grab and what the value of that is. But there's also, I think, a little slight nervousness of, well, that's the trend now. Will this thing keep going? What are the drivers which are going to show for the next 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, however long it goes on for? This will be real. Revenue will continue.
The reason, even if you stop producing cells today, yesterday's production is going into cars that'll come back in 10 years.
Okay.
You got a great runway. It's not like your ore body just truncates.
So it's just coming.
Right?
Okay.
All the gigafactories are lithium-ion battery gigafactories.
Yeah.
Right? And why do you need to do it? For the same reason that we see at the moment is we're struggling to find out where are the raw materials going to come from for all of these batteries. So
discoveries are getting harder.
Whatever's going into them, recycling, mandatory recycling. That's what the EU battery regs. Then you'll find that the US will adopt something similar at some stage in the future, and everyone will do it, right? To try to make sure that this keeps going. So Primobius, after the Mobius loop, the never-ending loop, so that we can keep having lithium batteries going on in the future, and we can recycle recycled batteries, which is what we're doing now in test labs, right, with our partners. So, then every time you recycle it, you lower the carbon footprint, right? So you're getting something that's much more sustainable.
A circular system. We love it. Well, look, let's...
Dramas.
Thank you for the update.
No dramas, mate. Merry Christmas to you and the family.
Merry Christmas. I'm heading your neck of the woods, actually, after this.
Warm. I won't be so happy to get on a plane to get home this summer.
It's like, we're at -6 here.
It's freezing.
Nothing functions in the UK under +6.
Yeah.
So, well, I hope you get back. I hope you avoid all the chaos at the airport, which is coming from...
That's coming
because we've gone back to the
week.
70s as well. We're doing strikes again.
Yeah, don't worry. Australia's not immune to them either, right? We inherited that off you guys.
Thank you very much.
No
It's a pleasure.
dramas.
Well, we'll see you soon, okay?
Okay, thank you very much.